Hey everyone, welcome to The Year Was, a podcast all about today. I'm your host, Michael Montalvo, and together we take the history train back in time, once again, to discover what makes today truly unique. For the next few minutes, we continue to gather random nuggets of trivia to make you sound smart, or just drop that little fact that makes others stop and say,
Hey, who invited you?
Like, seriously, why are you here?
On this episode, we examine the events that occurred today, May 29th. I had to think about that for a second because I forgot what day we were actually recording for. We're recording this on Memorial Day 2019, which is...
Monday?
Well, I'm thinking of the date.
The 27th?
27th, yes.
So we're very close to our actual published date. And together, or I guess here we have returning guest, Jessica. Do you care if I say your last name?
No, I don't care.
Villarreal.
Mm-hmm.
And Marco Villarreal.
Yeah.
So from, I'm not going to say where you're from. That's weird. But I guess we each have a little topic that we're going to go over today.
Mm-hmm.
Or kind of discuss based on history from this day. I guess let's start with the one that you have. I'm pointing at Jessica for those of you who can't see, which is everybody. And let's go ahead and go into it.
Okay. The year was 1975, and on this day, Melanie Janine Brown was born in Leeds, England. So for those of you who don't know, lots of people call her Mel B. She was in a little-known band called Spice Girls.
Yeah, I picked this topic for you.
Yes, you did. I was a huge fan of Spice Girls when I was younger. Okay, I take that back.
I remember you having one CD.
I had one CD, but I played it over and over and over.
Okay.
Mel B was Scary Spice. So she was called Mel B because they also had Mel C, which was Sporty Spice. They had Emma Bunton, Baby Spice, Jerry Horner, Ginger Spice, and Victoria Beckham, also known as Posh Spice or as David Beckham's wife.
Wait, what was her name before she married Beckham?
Adams.
Was she Victoria Beckham during the Spice Girls?
I don't remember. I think she married him in... No, I'm not going to give a date because I feel like I'd be wrong. Anyways, the Spice Girls were created by Bob and Chris Herbert and a financier, Chick Murphy. I'm going with Chick. It's C-H-I-C.
That sounds right.
You know, that or chic. But I thought this was really interesting because they got the Spice Girls together by placing an ad in a magazine saying, hey, we want singers to audition for this all-female pop group. And I thought that was weird.
They made a movie about them.
They did make a movie. That movie was made in 1997, which was another one of my points.
Go on.
He didn't think I was going to do this research.
I did not. I thought it was such a weird topic that you weren't even going to do it.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I was kind of suggested it as a joke.
Oh, no. Yeah.
But obviously, this is not a joke.
Quite the opposite. So sadly, the Spice Girls only lasted from 1994 to 2000. Which is actually a lot longer than I thought it was.
I was just about to say that's actually a lot longer than I thought it would have been.
Yeah, I figured they would have been late, like, because since the movie was in 97, I don't remember them being really big after that.
Yeah, I would have said the peak of their career would have been 97 with the movie.
I always thought that she was really tall, but as a matter of fact, she's only 5'5", which is shorter than I am.
It's actually shorter than I am.
Yeah. Well, you and I are about the same
I'm
height.
the same height as Tom Cruise. So.
I've got nothing for that one. She's reportedly worth $50 million today, so that's pretty cool. That's a lot of money. She wrote an autobiography, and in it, she kind of talks about an abusive marriage that she had with Stephen Belafonte. She even talks about how she has like PTSD because of it. She said that she still struggled with a lot of pain and a lot of stuff that went through, and she often dealt with it through alcohol and sex before she went into therapy. In December of 2018, she announced that she would not be doing her book signing because she was in an accident, and this part was insane to me. She reportedly was at a friend's house, and she fell down a narrow flight of stairs, and she had 2 broken ribs and even a severed right hand that reattached.
What do you mean, like severed?
Severed. That's what I said, severed. I read all the things that I read said severed.
How did that happen?
I don't know. All
that must have been a really, really hard fall.
Yeah, all it said was that she was and fell down a flight of stairs at her friend's house. She even posted a hospital picture on Instagram with all of her Spice Girl members with her, saying, like that she was in recovery and that she wasn't going to do the book signing because her hand was all in stitches and they had to do emergency surgery and all that.
When was this? When did you say it was?
Last year, December.
Last year, she severed her hand.
That's what it said, severed. And it said reports came back that drug and alcohol tests came back negative, so she was not on anything.
It was just like she was walking up or down the stairs and
fell
just
and
like misstep. And
yeah.
What about like you remember when Wendy Williams, I think that's her name, Wendy, she had that micro stroke on TV?
Mm-hmm.
What if it was something like that and she fell? Oh. Did they ever say what the cause was?
They never said why. They just said that, she had fallen down the stairs. She seems to be doing all right, though. At the time of recording, she was just on an episode of Piers Morgan's Life Stories talking about her love life and stuff like that.
Huh. Well, that's interesting.
Yep. And my last point is that she has 3 kids, Angel, Phoenix, and Madison.
I think we needed to know their names.
She was... Well, I didn't put last names in there, but she was also married to Eddie Murphy at one point.
I think I remember that. I don't know. I think I remember that.
So I did research.
Well, that's pretty cool. I didn't think you were actually going to do research. But that's actually a lot of stuff I didn't know about the Spice Girls and Mel B.
Yeah.
Who was born today in 1975.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was actually pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie. That I learned a little bit about that, and it was pretty interesting stuff. One of the people that I'd like to talk about today is Sir Edmund Hillary. The year was 1953, and on this day, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay became the first explorers to reach the top of Mount Everest. So he was born in 1919 in Auckland, New Zealand, and he was a lot smaller than most of the children. And it was because of this that he avoided sports, instead really choosing to read. Now, the stories that he went and picked were adventure, and it was because of this, it was these books that inspired him to climb mountains later on in life. He was advanced whenever he was in school, and he finished grammar school 2 years early, then became an average student in high school. But he grew taller, and with his height came an interest in sports, in particular that of boxing, which increased his confidence. At age 16, for a school trip, Hillary traveled to Mount Ruapehu, and it was here that he was exposed to climbing, and he discovered that he had a strength and an endurance that his other schoolmates just didn't have. So, in 1939, he completed his first major climb, when he reached the peak of Mount Oliver with his friend Tenzing Norgay. Hillary went on to climb the Swiss Alps in 1949, participated in an Everest reconnaissance in 1951, and attempted to climb the Cho Oyu in 1952. Now, this failed because there were no routes on the Nepal side. By this point, he had become an experienced climber, scaling 11 of the Himalayan peaks that were over 20,000 feet. He joined an 11-man team to climb Everest, which was led by Colonel John Hunt, and was sponsored by the Alpine Club of Great Britain. Included with this team was actually Hillary's friend Tenzing Norgay. At the time, Everest was controlled by Tibet, and they only allowed one expedition a year, so this was really their only chance to do this for the year. They gave Hillary's expedition the go-ahead, and they set out in March with 400 people, including guides, porters, and lots of baggage. The kind that you take on trips, not the mental kind, I assume. The climb was difficult, and of the 11-man team, only 4 were able to continue as they neared the summit. Hillary was paired with Tenzing, and they made their final attempt to reach the summit, and on May 29th, at approximately 11:30 a.m., Hillary and Norgay reached the summit. Edmund Hillary was only 33, and he had conquered the Earth's highest peak. He took a photo of Tenzing, but because Tenzing didn't know how to use a camera, there are no photos of Hillary on Everest's summit. Edmund Hillary left a cross, and Tenzing Norgay left an offering of chocolates. As they came down the mountain, George Lowe, a friend of Hillary's from childhood, met them with hot soup and was told, "Well, George, we knocked the bastard off." For 15 minutes, the two were 29,028 feet above sea level, and for their efforts, Edmund Hillary and expedition leader John Hunt were knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. The Indian Prime Minister, however, refused to let Norgay be knighted, and he was awarded a medal for his efforts. The next thing I know is interesting for a lot of people, and it's one of those things that I think people are always going to talk about. Not necessarily this specific thing, but just the person that we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
And that is John F. Kennedy. The year was 1917, and on this day, John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was born. I think we're just going to kind of talk about Kennedy in general. We're not going to focus on anything specific, but just talk about who he was growing up, his military a little bit, and then going into politics. And then we'll touch on the assassination of Kennedy. And let's let Marco talk about, or I guess let's let all of us talk about Kennedy. Now, from what you were saying earlier, Kennedy was the second of 9 children. Now, if I'm remembering right, his older brother was Joseph Kennedy.
Yes.
And that he was named after his dad, I guess, because his dad's a Joe Kennedy.
Yes.
I can't remember. Oh, I guess Bobby Kennedy was one of the younger ones who was also a politician, and Ted Kennedy would have been another one. So from his early life, his school days, what can you tell us about Kennedy?
From his early days, he had a disease that made him really prone to sicknesses.
What kind of sicknesses did he end up having growing up? Do you know? Because I know that would have been around the time of measles would have been a big thing.
He had scarlet fever.
Yes, I remember that because I did a report on Kennedy way back too.
It says scarlet fever, long-standing gastrointestinal disease, Addison's disease, and chronic back pain.
It was actually Addison's disease, which is the thing that caused majority of his sicknesses.
Well, I know he injured his back, and I always thought it was because of the PT 109 during his military career. But you were telling me the other day that that's not the case.
Yeah, he was in high school. He was a diver, and that was actually where it started. He had an injury diving that caused his back problems, which went through the remainder of his life.
So it was just a bad dive that caused him to have these back injuries and everything. Going into World War II, with his injury, I don't imagine that's easy to get into the military. I know Sinatra had a thing with his inner ear, and because of that, he was rejected from being able to serve. And I know people with flat feet weren't allowed to serve. So we all know that he served in World War II. Mm-hmm. And how did he manage to do that with his back injury?
Yeah, his father, with all of his knowing people through politics and everything, he actually put a good word in for him. And that was pretty much the way that because the first time that he went in to take the physical, he actually failed it. And for the next year, worked out and just kept on exercising. And his father got him another chance to take the physical, and he passed it.
Okay.
So I guess the more people you know.
Yeah, the more people you know. Now, whenever PT 109 happened, there was a boat, and it hit the PT, broke it apart, and they were all thrown into the water, and he had to carry one of the other sailors to a nearby island.
Yeah, it was actually during that swim that he actually re-injured his back, and the pain continued throughout.
Now, he was awarded a medal for that, I believe.
It says he got the Purple Heart.
Well, yeah, I guess Kennedy would have gotten a Purple Heart for the entire thing because of the injury.
Right, yeah.
So he was never awarded a Medal of Honor or anything like that?
Not anything that I see. Okay. I don't know, but that could be.
And then he goes into politics. You were saying that he didn't want to go into politics. It was his brother who was being groomed for it. And with the death of his brother, Joseph Kennedy, he was kind of given priority as far as political ambition from his family. So he was pushed into that life. And from there, he would go on to run for president, and with the help of people like Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., they were able to get that election won. And I know a lot of talk about that is that the mafia helped with that election, and the mafia actually bought the election for Kennedy. Did you run across that whenever you were doing research on it?
I didn't actually run across that. One of the things that I did come across was when he was actually in Senate, like in his seat in the Senate, he had surgery on his back to work, relieve the pain. And after the surgery, like everything went fine, but when they put him into a waiting room, he actually didn't wake up.
Really?
And he was actually in a coma for about 2 or 3 days after that, to the point where they even brought like an actual priest in to his room to read him his last rites. And surprisingly, he just like woke up and was fine after that.
Oh, geez. I didn't even know that. Going into it would have been 1960 that he was elected president. And I know there's talks about affairs. It's pretty generally considered to be fact with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And I think there are others, but I know prominently Marilyn Monroe. There was famously, or I don't know if a lot of people really know this, but there was the incident where Sinatra built a guest house on his property for JFK to come stay at. He actually built a helipad because he was going to be in town, and then at the last minute, JFK decided, or was kind of instructed not to stay there because of Sinatra's mob ties, and so he never stayed at the property, and because of that, Sinatra blamed Peter Lawford, and the two never spoke again. What's interesting about this, and I read this not too long ago, is that the movie Robin and the Seven Hoods, which I know you've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen it.
Yeah. In the movie Robin and the Seven Hoods, the role that Bing Crosby played was originally meant for Peter Lawford. And why this is interesting is because after Sinatra, I guess he threw a fit, and there's really no other way to say it. He threw a tantrum and cut off ties with Peter Lawford because he felt like Peter Lawford had betrayed him. JFK actually went and stayed with Bing Crosby, but they were still close enough, or they were still on the terms enough where Bing Crosby was in that movie to replace Peter Lawford for not having JFK stay at his house.
That's kind of intense. That's
Wow.
And I'm sure that Frank Sinatra was considered him a huge friend.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have to look at that election, and I know Sinatra really helped get Kennedy elected. But he's in office from 1960 to 1963. Throughout that time, you have the Bay of Pigs, which I don't want to go into a lot of detail because we're going to do an episode on that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have, I guess, Bay of Pigs, Cuban Missile Crisis kind of all fit together. But in 1963, November, he's in Dallas, Texas, and that's whenever he's assassinated over in
Dealey Plaza.
Yeah, he's assassinated in Dealey Plaza, which I've been there, and
Yes.
you can. Have you been there?
I have not been there, but I really do want to go.
You can go up because they have the building, the book depository where Oswald was, and they have it kind of turned into a museum. Not
Yeah.
kind of, it is turned into a museum. But you can go up there onto the top floor, and you can actually see the window where Oswald shot from, and that whole little corner is glassed off and maintained in a way that it would have looked as it did in 1963. So you can actually go up to the glass and look out the window, and in the middle of the street, right where Kennedy was shot, there's an X, and you can see the view and everything that he had to it.
Yes.
Wow.
It's a cool place. It's an amazing little building and everything.
I think I go see that like every time that I'm in Dallas.
Yeah, if I go to Dallas, that's one of the things that I really like to go see just because of the history involved with it.
Yeah, I think the last time that I tried to go, they were closed. I think it was probably on a Sunday or some holiday, but it's a really neat experience to go there.
I mean, we're going to do an episode on the Kennedy assassination at some point. There's way too much to go into than what we're really
Yeah.
able to do here in this format. You have Lee Harvey Oswald, possibly more shooters, and the Warren Commission. And if you watch JFK, and it's back and to the left. But you were saying that the reason he stayed upright was because
of his back injury. He actually had to wear a back brace pretty much every day of his life, and the brace would actually, it was kind of like not a corset, but it was kind of like it literally stayed on his back and made him like sit up straight and stand up straight. And it was actually because of the brace that he wasn't able to move and go for cover, and he was sitting straight up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was watching this documentary one time, and they were talking about the Kennedy assassination, and I want to bring this up because they're always talking about the magic bullet and how the bullet has to go and then turn around and come back in at a different angle, then turn around again, come back in and hit his leg while after hitting his shoulder. And it's like, it's one bullet. How does it do all that? But one of the things that this documentary was really showing is that the magic bullet doesn't work if you're sitting level. But the way that the car was, Kennedy was sitting up higher than what the Texas governor, I think, was. I can't remember the guy's name now that I'm trying to talk about it. Because they're at different angles, the trajectory of the bullet and the way that everybody was turned, the magic bullet lines up perfectly. And it's really not a magic bullet. It's just a bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things I always thought was kind of interesting after really looking into it and doing research into the thing.
Right.
Yeah. The thing that I thought was like really interesting was after Johnson was sworn in as president on Air Force One, they actually would not leave until Kennedy's body was actually on the plane.
That's crazy. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of protocol was kind of broken, and a lot of it was kind of, had to be set because of the incident. And I would really kind of like to see what would have happened had Kennedy not been assassinated.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just, anything that you're really looking at. What would have happened if Tsar Nicholas II hadn't been assassinated, with the entire royal family of Russia.
Right, yeah. Or Martin Luther King Jr.
Jr. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, you look back on John F. Kennedy's life, and the most thing that he's famous for is his assassination.
Yeah.
Right.
So I would have liked to have seen what he could have done had he not been killed.
Yeah,
at that moment.
He was pretty much close to the end of his first term as president. He was going up for re-election in 64, which is why he was in Dallas. One thing that I really wanted to throw in there was like the morning of his assassination, he was having breakfast. And I don't remember who the people were that were with him, but he was like, one of the things that he said was that it wouldn't be very hard to assassinate a president. All you would need is a tall building and a high-powered rifle with a scope.
For that morning, it's pretty intense.
He said that morning.
That's crazy for him saying it that morning. It's weird.
It's crazy some of these people that were assassinated had that kind of inclination or kind of idea, because I remember Martin Luther King Jr. had something similar.
Yeah, well, we did an episode on Martin Luther King.
Yeah, exactly.
The day before he was assassinated, he basically went out and said, I know people are out there trying to kill me, but I'm not worried about that because I know what the future is going to be for everybody, and I'm not scared about that. So if I have to, and I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Right.
But he was saying, if I have to die, then that's fine because I know what's in store for everybody.
Right, and I think one of the words or one of the phrases that he used was, I've seen the promised land.
Yeah.
So, but that's intense that's very interesting to me to see that two different people that were both assassinated had that inclination or that knowledge or that foresight to say something like that right before it happened.
Yeah, it's really crazy. But I think that may do it for us today. This episode's going to run long. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can find an audio version on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, and Google Play. I actually just found out today that I'm on Castbox.
Nice.
So I subscribe to myself on that, and I'm looking at that, so that's pretty cool. If you, links in the description for all of that stuff. If you like the podcast and want to hear more, give us a rate and a review. That helps me out, and that lets me know what direction to keep this going in. And hey, if you like it, share it with a friend, because they might like it too. You can find me on social media and at YouTube at the Apple Cider Club. And as always, I want to thank the Tim Kreitz Band for our musical theme. I didn't even think to ask, but do you guys have anything that you plug? You don't plug anything. You don't do anything.
I don't do anything.
No.
Well, thank you both for being here. Thank you.
I don't do anything at all. I just sit
Not
at
that.
home.
I'm just like, thank you for doing this Mel B thing. Of all the random topics to do, Mel B was born today. And Marco, thank you for being here to talk about John F. Kennedy.
Mm-hmm.
And also, thank you for listening. I'm pointing at everyone right now.
Finger guns.
We'll see you next time.